get out before we start?
Yeah, no, I got an intro that I've been working on for like all week.
Oh, awesome. I'm ready for it.
Here it is. Welcome to Archers of Horror, episode 6.
I love it.
Our film today is CREEPSHOW 2. Kind of a big title. We, on this podcast, watch every release from Arrow Video, every horror release. And CREEPSHOW 2 is one of the big names, but Rusty, did you enjoy this film?
Not as much as I did when I saw it probably in 1989. What about you?
I have felt the same way about this movie from the first time I saw it until now. Where would you rank this in terms of the films we've seen so far?
Probably in the middle. I still think Burbs and Blood Rage and Vamp are at the top, but CREEPSHOW is better than this stuff, and also much better than What Have You Done to Solange?
Mamma mia!
I do agree that Blood Rage is at the top.
It's not cranberry sauce.
It's definitely worth watching, at least for the middle segment.
Yeah, the middle segment, the Raft, which is definitely the most acclaimed and rightfully so of the segments.
I think the craziest thing, I'm just going to start for a second.
Yeah.
The first one, the Old Chief Woodenhead, and the last one, Hitchhiker, were like rejects for CREEPSHOW 1.
Yeah.
So yet they made a whole movie with those two.
Yeah, so CREEPSHOW 2 came out in 1987, right?
Yes.
Kind of a longer wait after CREEPSHOW 1, which came out in 82.
Mm-hmm. I just want to ask you, as far as anthology films go, where would you put this one? Is there other films you would recommend over this? I think you're a fan of what, Body Bags?
No, I'm not a fan of Body Bags. In fact, I just rewatched Body Bags the other day, and I have found that Body Bags has really been getting a lot more hype in the horror community as of late. People saying it's kind of an undiscovered classic, and that the first segment is one of the best things Carpenter ever did. But I actually found it to be pretty bad, and I didn't really like it. And have you seen Body Bags?
No, I know you did watch it. I think you texted me about that, so that's why I brought it up.
There's definitely anthology films I like, and I've always kind of idealized anthology films and anthology TV shows, even though they were never as good as I wanted them to be. But
what about Trilogy of Terror?
Trilogy of Terror, I mean, I think everyone on Earth agrees that the first two segments aren't really worth watching. Mm-hmm. And I did just watch the Zuni Doll segment again a couple weeks ago, and that's still cool. Would love to fight a little monster like that.
Hi, I'm Snuggle.
The recent film Southbound, I know you don't see movies made after 1990, but
everything stopped after 1990 for me.
That was a pretty good movie. Do you like horror anthology movies? Never really heard you mention them before.
I kind of just mentioned the ones that I'm aware of or that I've seen.
Yeah.
I did like what's it called? Cat's Eye.
Oh, I just watched that again the other day as well.
That one I like. But other than that, I haven't really seen many other ones.
We should do a Freddy vs. Jason style movie with the monster from Cat's Eye versus the Zuni doll from Trilogy of Terror.
What kind of budget we talking? Because I don't think that's going to sell well.
$8,000.
Let's do it.
Cat's eye, I can never get away. Cat's eye, I am still
So, CREEPSHOW 2.
CREEPSHOW 2. CREEPSHOW 2. This is a movie that I knew we were going to do sooner or later, and I'm kind of glad it's sooner to get it out of the way.
Really? You dislike it that much?
I don't dislike it that much. Let's just take it. Let's take it segment by segment. Although let's start with a little bit of an overview.
Yeah, I mean, for a movie with such horror heavy hitters, with like the stories by Stephen King, screenplay by George Romero, special effects by your favorite Ed French. Now, also there were special effects by Howard Berger, who's done a shitload of films.
Yes.
And also a very young Greg Nicotero, so I'm sure there's a lot of Walking Dead fans out there.
That's true. Huge
this
makeup
is one of his
staff in
this
film.
Yeah, the makeup and the effects were pretty good in this film. I mean,
they are.
With the exception of Old Chief Woodenhead, I would say.
Yeah, I would agree. Although I also felt that we didn't see enough of Old Chief Woodenhead.
That is true. And director Michael Gornick, who was the cinematographer Dawn of the Dead in the first Creepshow.
Oh, yes. And Day of the Dead as well.
And so,
Oh, and we forgot Tom Savini also on the makeup crew of this.
yes, and he was also starred in it
Yeah.
as the creep. He was the
As
creep.
the creep. As the
Yes.
creep.
Did a fantastic job as the creep.
I didn't love him. Wraparound story is like always the worst element of every anthology film. And here is no exception.
Well, you already know how I feel about Tom Savini.
Oh, I forgot.
I'm sure I bring it up every year. Do you? Well, yeah, I'm sure you remember. What was that horror convention that we went to? Which one was it?
I don't recall the name, but it's one that I think is probably pretty big now.
Yeah, I mean, what year was that? Would you say like 99?
I would say, I think 97.
Well, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyways, if you recall, I purchased a poster of Dawn of the Dead, and I was walking around, and Tom Savini walked past me, and I asked him very nicely if he could sign it for me, and he said no, he didn't have time for that. Go to his booth and pay for an autograph. And
Which
ever since
is
then, I dislike Tom
perfectly
Savini.
reasonable.
Reasonable.
Yeah. What do you think he just goes to horror conventions because he's like got nothing else to do?
First of all, there was no one else around, so it wasn't like I was drawing attention to Tom Savini. And second of all, it's Tom Savini. I mean, he's a legend in that area, but if you saw him on the street, would you care?
Definitely not.
Yeah.
If I saw Ed French on the street, I'd fucking lose my mind. It'd be like seeing the Beatles.
What about Stephen King if you saw him on the street?
I actually have seen Stephen King on the street, but he was in a car.
Wait, when you were in Maine?
Yeah, I was in
Is that
Maine,
true?
in the town of Bridgeton. Yes, right near the supermarket that was the inspiration for The Mist, and also near the site of what used to be John's Restaurant, which I remember appears in Firestarter and I think Carrie, but no longer is there.
Sorry, sad.
Yeah, I saw him.
Very sad news.
I saw him in the passenger seat of a car, and I was like, "Oh, that's Stephen King."
And let's not leave out music by Rick Wakeman. So
How did you feel about this score?
Eat Your Heart Out, Rick Wakeman. Do you remember
Yeah,
that from Jello Biafra?
No, what?
Play the clip. It's from Short Songs. Play it. Let's hear it.
Oh, okay.
Rick Wakeman, eat your heart out. Here we go.
But so who is Rich Wakeman that he would get this call out treatment in Dead Kennedys song?
He's like a famous I guess he does scores and stuff, but I think he's a piano player or a pianist.
Okay.
He's pretty
but
famous.
What did you think of the score of this film?
To be honest with you, I don't even remember it that well.
Okay.
And I watched the film twice, and I don't remember it.
I would say I did not particularly care for it. In the opening title had like a pretty good kind of very 80s synthy thing. But then the Old Chief Woodenhead score is fucking horrible, weird schmaltz. The other scores are a little like too like synth meets rock with a little too much rock.
I don't know if anybody cares, but originally, I think Tom Savini was slated to direct the film.
Oh yeah, I read that as well.
And did you know that George Romero was actually supposed to direct Pet Sematary, and Michael Gornick was supposed to shoot it?
Yes, I did know that.
Did you know that, or you picked that up from the commentary?
I'm not going to answer these kind of questions. And also, I guess we should say that there was originally 2 additional segments of this film.
Yes.
That they never shot. First of them would be The Cat from Hell, which later appeared in the Tales from the Dark Side movie.
Did you ever see it?
Yes. Have you ever seen it? It's pretty good film.
I think I did see the movie, but I don't remember it at all.
This segment has, let me see how quickly I could describe this guy. Remember that old actor who was like, hello? You might remember the Tales from the Crypt episode where he switches bodies with like a young person to be with like a younger woman.
She's young.
Oh, I do remember that episode.
You know that guy who's like, hello?
Get up.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of guys that do that. So
And
give me
then
more.
he says he's kind of like, hello.
I don't know what you're doing.
Anyway, he's got white hair, dude. He's an old man.
Oh.
Some people consider the Tales from the Dark Side film to be the unofficial Creepshow number 3 because it has that Cat from Hell segment. And then there was a horror bowling one that honestly sounds like it probably would have been pretty fucking lame.
By the way, I know exactly who you're talking about with the old guy.
Yeah?
It's William Hickey, who was in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
The blessing.
Oh,
And,
okay, cool.
and your impression's pretty good now because that's pretty much how he sounds in that movie.
Hello.
There you go. Yes, that's William Hickey. So
Okay.
if anybody's seen Christmas Vacation, he's I forgot what character he was.
He's the guy that says, hello. Okay.
That's
and,
him.
And then they retired that
Lois.
Arches of Horror running joke.
That's
Okay. And then,
well, before we start, I just wanted to ask you what your history is with this film. Like, when was the first time you saw it?
I saw this movie when it first came on video because I got into Creepshow when I was really, really young. And I remember like getting this as a new release in like 1988. And this movie has always been a part of my life.
Same here. I know you didn't have HBO growing up, but this was one of those films that like HBO would just play like every day at a certain time. So in like 1988 or 89, I was just watching this movie like every day, but mostly just for the Raft.
Yeah.
And for a while, I thought the Raft was the last segment because I would always turn it off after the Raft. But were you scared when you saw it? Did it affect you in any way? Did you?
This movie always just felt fun to me, you know? I remember watching this with brothers and just running around and being like, hey, lady, thanks for the ride. Hey, lady, thanks for the ride.
When I would see this as a kid, the Raft one kind of scared me, even though I was maybe like 10 years old.
Yeah.
And the reason why is like, I mean, obviously, Old Chief Woodenhead is kind of lame. And even as a kid, it seemed kind of lame.
Yeah, even as a kid. So true.
And the Hitchhiker one, like, I guess it could be kind of scary, but like for me as a kid, like I wasn't driving, so I couldn't relate. I knew I would never be in that situation.
Yeah.
But the Raft seemed kind of believable that you could be out in like the ocean or in a pool or a lake and something like that could happen to you.
Yeah, very, very
And for
true,
that
very true.
reason, like I would think about it. I like the artwork, the comic book artwork for like the credits.
So yeah, the opening artwork by Bernie Wrightson, recently deceased, is cool.
Yeah, I really like the look of, I guess what they were going for was the EC Comics.
Yeah, no shit.
Like the tales. Yeah, well, I'm sure there's people listening that don't know that.
Well, if they don't know that, they should get the fuck off the air.
Well, they're not on the air, they're listening.
Look, I don't know all the mumbo jumbo yet. It's only episode 6. I don't know the radio slang.
So like the artwork for, actually I really like the artwork for the Old Chief Woodenhead, if you remember any of those stills.
I can draw them from memory. That is how
Awesome.
my commitment to the research of the show is. So yes, I can picture them, and I agree with you. They're beautiful.
But as far as the animation goes, that I did not love.
The animation looks like
Poor
Philip
man's Dragon's
CDI.
Lair.
Philip
Yeah.
CDI. Yeah, poor man's Dragon Lair. It doesn't look like anything. It's like, I was listening to the commentary and Mike Gornick, the director, is like, yeah, it really nailed that. Well, he's got a very
Oh my God.
radio-friendly voice. He's like, really nailed that EC Comics feel. I'm like, not even close, brother.
Not even close. I feel like I could put out that kind of animation with little training.
That animation was very unpleasant.
Mm-hmm.
And its look was kind of like, I don't even know how to describe it. It was kind of like not totally defined, like what the style was, but whatever the style was, I didn't like it.
Yeah, the only time I kind of liked it was the bullies
Look at what I did.
in the scene
I'm
where they,
sorry.
step on the kids. I think his name's Billy. I'm guessing Billy. It seems like
Yeah.
his name. But when he steps on the Venus flytrap, like Bud,
I want his ass.
and you remember what the bullies looked like?
Yeah.
The nerdy one and like the guy with the red hair. Like that animation was kind of cool.
Yeah, well, you've always loved bullies. You're a fan of bullies
I did root for the bullies even as a kid.
across all media.
That is true. Karate Kid.
A weird thing about the interstitials, I guess, is that okay? So the creep, it starts out in live action, right? And
Yeah, because the creep is throwing some newspapers, or no, the comic book,
yeah,
which the kid is waiting for. Now, is he the delivery boy, the kid, or is he just waiting for his issue?
his mechanics of getting this comic were needlessly complicated.
That is true. But the creep
other
actually knew the kid's name though, because he's just like he points out like Billy, you whatever. I don't remember what he says, but
Yeah, it's like the new issue is really good.
I don't think he said that.
Something
But
like that.
I've never seen anyone so impatient, Billy. As if your life depended on getting the first copy off the presses.
my question: the creep who resides in like a dungeon, is his occupation a newspaper like delivery guy?
I guess so. You know? You never know.
Is that how he supports
you
his
never
dragon?
really know the home life of the people that you work with.
He has to support that dragon somehow.
He's like, it's like 300 pounds of food a day.
I got to deliver these
hard.
papers.
But here's the thing: it switched to animation like when the issue landed, but it could have switched.
When he
It could have
opened up.
switched to animation when the kid started opening it and reading it. Wouldn't that have been much more organic to the whole thing?
Yeah, I just think the kid was a poor choice for acting, so they had to go to the animation.
Yeah, they had to get. They're like, let's get out of live action as quick as we can. Billy is kind of a bust.
The funny thing is, it took like, from what they showed in the behind the scenes, it took Tom Savini like 40 takes. Was he the one actually in the latex, or was he just a voice?
No, he was actually in the latex, and originally it was supposed to be Ed French of Blood Rage.
So that's how he got dicked over.
Well, he got screwed over by the production because I heard differing stories. On the commentary, it was allegedly just due to a schedule change that happened because of bad weather they experienced during shooting the Raft, which was the first segment to get shot. But
Yes.
I also
Yeah, there was
read
a hurricane
that
for that.
they disagreed with the direction Ed French was taking the blob monster, as they called it, and then had him replaced. So whatever it is, I recently followed Ed French on Instagram, and I hit message just to see that I could do it. And I'm going to message Ed French someday on Instagram, and he's going to be a guest on the 50th episode of this show, Archers of Horror, episode 6.
Do you have an episode in mind?
Episode 50.
I mean, a film in mind for that. The big 5-0.
By then, I'm going to have made a film about Ed French, and that's going to be the film that we watch.
Better be a good film. For
Excuse
number
my-
50.
It's called Excuse My Ed French, and it's
Nice.
a great film. Someone please kill me. So, yeah, the opening animation feels like a shitty version of Dragon's Lair, and it's just really not very good.
No, I didn't like any of that Venus flytrap shit, even as a kid.
Yeah,
I was really hoping the bully just got what was coming to him. I mean, not the bully, the kid. I really was hoping the bully delivered a beatdown to that kid.
Yeah, that would have been a good bleak ending if it was just like a beatdown and then like the kid just silently sobbing in like a field for a minute.
I would have loved that. It would have ended on such a great note. Considering that pretty much the theme of this film was that it was all about revenge.
I actually think there is a different theme.
Really, what's the theme you were thinking?
Well, I don't know if I should go into it now or at the end.
Okay.
But there is an element that links all of the stories. So when we get to the end, I will reveal it. And believe me,
I hope it's not the Cisco kid.
nope. No one has ever had this take on Creepshow 2. So
Wow.
listeners are going to have to listen to the end to hear what this unifying element of the entire film is.
I like that. Tease it to the end.
But unless you have anything else to say about the opening sequence, we'll go into Old Chief Woodenhead.
Yeah, I'm over it. Let's go. Let's do the chief. Let's talk about the chief.
I have never met anyone who likes this.
No, it's certainly the weakest segment of the film.
features
Probably has the
George.
two biggest stars though. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Tell us about these stars, Rusty.
The legendary George Kennedy.
George Kennedy, from the only actor to be in all 4 airport films.
In the Naked Gun series.
He was in the Naked Gun series. You might remember him as the rebellious DJ in the film Pump Up the Volume.
Is that true? I don't remember Pump Up the Volume.
I'm doing pirate radio. No, that's Christian Slater. People get George Kennedy and Christian Slater confused.
That's true. Also, Dorothy Lamour.
Now, this was her final role, and I'm sad to say to this lady in heaven, I don't know what her other credits were. What were they?
She was, I guess, the most well-known for the Road to series with Bing Crosby and Bob Hope.
Oh, interesting.
Road to Morocco and Road to Zanzibar. She always seemed to play like the princess character, which for a brief period I was very into those films.
So we open in a town that's just decaying, and we see George Kennedy talking to a wooden Indian statue.
Yes.
And singing Jimmy Crack Corn. Can't say that I've ever sung that song.
Crack corn and I don't care.
And he's bantering with the chief that he sings that song all the time.
Heard me sing that silly song 1,000 times.
Now the thing is, like, it seems like he's planning this paint job for weeks, that he's going to give the chief some new paint.
Mm-hmm.
But man, how did he do such a poor job painting a little line of war paint? Like, that line was the only line he seemed to be able to paint was completely crooked.
Yeah, and it took him a really long time, and he's like, "Oh, Chief, I'll finish tomorrow." And you're like, the Chief's like, "You could just do it in the next 7 seconds maximum."
And like, he was concentrating so hard. Did you see his big tongue hanging out as he's trying to paint a straight line?
Yes, I did.
An inch long straight line, but it's just crazy that he couldn't fit. Like, it seemed like it was morning when the scene started, and it quickly turned to night within like 20 minutes, not even, maybe 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have to let them.
But there wasn't much in between.
Shot in real time.
No, but the characters there was never like a absent moment where time passed. We always saw the actors interacting.
Yeah. I mean, the exchanges between him and his wife, these actors might be legends, but that acting is as wooden as old Chief Woodenhead.
That is true.
We got to keep your war paint fresh. Big Chief without war paint is like
a storekeeper without a town to sell his goods to?
Dorothy Lamour really added nothing to this story. I mean, I know you're supposed to think she's like the sweet old grandma, but...
Yeah. You know, one thing I hadn't noticed until this most recent viewing is that Chief White Moon gets in his car and then drives like 3 feet and then gets out of his car again. It was almost like they wrote that as like seeing them way down the street, and then the location didn't really work for it, but they're like, let's just keep it in.
Well, that town that they were in, they didn't really need any cars anyway. Everything was in like a block radius.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing that I thought was pretty neat was that town was all legit. Everything you saw was standing there in Arizona, in Prescott, Arizona.
Well, I don't think they built a town on this movie's budget, so that's not a surprise.
They did build one of the Ruffians' trailers.
Yeah, I could see that.
But the thing that I thought was cool was that the inside of like the convenience store, or the what is that, a trading post or whatever it is that
like
George Kennedy
store,
ran,
hardware store,
right.
Whatever. Yeah.
That was completely dressed by I forgot the name, but I like the way it looked inside.
Yeah, it was cool inside. Bruce Miller.
Yeah. Bruce Miller. Yes. I thought the set dressing was pretty cool for that.
Yeah, props to Bruce Miller, the production designer of that film.
So if you're watching Creepshow 2 for the first time or whatever time, just check out the general store.
This might be some of the only enjoyment you get out of the Chief Woodenhead segment.
That is true. Did you find, like, I guess George and Dorothy's character's name was Ray and Martha, so just letting you know, but did you find them as like the endearing old couple at all?
No, I wanted them to die.
So when you saw it coming, you were excited?
Actually, no. I actually didn't want them to die, and when they did, I found that you know, I was like, wow, I can't believe they killed these old people. But they were annoying. Like the scene did them no favors where they're just talking about their store and their lives.
Yeah.
Ray, it's been 4 days since you've had a cash-paying customer.
I hate to say this, but as a kid, like when Martha was killed, I didn't mind, but I was a little sad that Ray had to take a shotgun blast to the belly.
And you could see all of George Kennedy's acting decisions as they were happening. He's like, oh. He's like stunned that he got shot. Then he's like doing this weird kind of breathing thing.
Frankenstein
like,
walk. Well, that Frankenstein walk he did towards Martha's body.
Did I tell you, we're recording this just after Halloween, and I had been feeling kind of guilty that I hadn't done enough for Halloween, but I was walking down the street the other day and a homeless guy called me Frankenstein. So now I feel like I'm covered.
What was the reason? Was it because you were walking like a monster, or?
But I had passed him really soon earlier, and he made a pretty aggressive approach, and I was like, sorry, no money. And then I was coming back really soon after that with a bag, and he was like, Frankenstein, you've got money, Frankenstein. I was just like, no.
Oh, gosh.
Well, that's why he called you Frankenstein.
Yeah, so old Chief Woodenhead.
Is that it? Are we talking
No. We were talking more about it.
Okay.
One question that this is, before we get into, as soon as we see old Chief Woodenhead, we know that he's going to come to life and enact some revenge for an event that's going to happen. I wanted to ask you, what, you got a fucking problem?
Yeah, I got a problem. We got that impression when Ben Whitemoon, the other chief, showed up to the general store, and like the Chief Woodenhead gave a nod to him, so we knew something magical was going to happen.
Yeah, but it's funny because he doesn't really give a nod. I didn't really notice a nod until the commentary, and they mentioned that. It's kind of more of like a twitch, like they couldn't get the makeup to do like a nod.
Yeah.
But this segment made me wonder, did you ever have any dolls that you were afraid that were going to come to life?
I don't think I had any dolls that. I had some like pretty large Alvin and the Chipmunk dolls, but that when you pulled the string in the back, they spoke, but it was kind of creepy language. But I never feared them. What did you have? Did you have
life? You would have wished that Brittany came to life and you could have dated her. My mother, one summer in Maine, found a doll in a store in the town that I mentioned before that Stephen King has so many references to, Bridgeton, Maine. And she found a doll there, and she was like, "This doll should be $100, but it's only $10. It's a collector's item." And I thought it was haunted for like the rest of my life. I was like, whatever you do, don't insult that doll. Don't be mean to that doll. Don't knock that doll over by accident. One time our mutual friend Eric kind of was like abusing it, and I was like, you don't like, you get to go home. This doll is going to look for justice at like 2 a.m. tonight.
Didn't your mom also have like regular porcelain dolls? I think she had some of those throughout the house at one time, right?
Yeah, my mother had a thriving doll collection. Oh yeah, the one in the rocking chair. Yeah,
those were always creepy.
Yeah, those are definitely creepy.
There's always a fear of getting your throat slit in the middle of the night from one of those things.
My mother collected dolls and bells. I was always like, I'm just going to hear a bell in the middle of the night, like making its way towards me, and a doll's just like ding, 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 ding. Back to the fucking thing, dude. Back to the fucking thing, please. What else do you have to say about Chief Woodenhead?
Well, I got a lot to say. Okay. Well, the first thing is, like everything Stephen King, these were supposed to take place in Maine, but I didn't get that feeling at all.
Well, the third segment was shot in Maine, I think.
Yeah, but that could have been anywhere.
But only because on the commentary they mentioned going to Maine, I think, for the third one. But yeah, the first two could not feel less like Maine.
What did you think about Ben Whitemoon in his relationship to Ray? I mean, he points out that he's ashamed of his people pretty much for taking advantage. But what kind of history do you think they have? Are they old friends, or that they started the town when it was thriving?
Yeah, I think so. I think that we as the viewer are supposed to feel that Ben Whitemoon and Ray have a good relationship. But I also wondered if it actually was a good relationship, or if Ray really was just being taken advantage of.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're trying to more sympathize for Ray, that he's such a nice guy. So when he is murdered, that we feel horrible for him. Yeah, I mean that the one scene where Ben White Moon explains the whole situation and gives him the like the turquoise and the other possessions of his people to hold on to until their debts are paid off.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like there's a pretty good leeway in paying it off. What does he say? 2 autumns.
If we cannot pay in 2 autumns, the linne are yours forever.
Yeah.
So if they're not paid off in 2 autumns, then they're raised forever.
Imagine how heartbroken Ray would be if he found out from the one other store in town. The guy was like, "Oh man, I got some priceless jewels from the chief."
Well, they were valued at over $10,000. I think they mentioned.
I completely forgot that. I don't remember hearing that.
One of the ruffians says it, but the chief does say it's bad to borrow, but worse to beg. That was his line. Do you remember what Martha says to Ben White Moon in the scene?
Yeah, she kind of sets it up like she's going to say something bad, and then she says something nice. You mean? Where she's like, my husband is too trusting.
Yeah, he trusted your people too much. But like Ben kind of gave her a face like,
Yeah, he thought she was going to be more offensive than she was.
Yeah. He was already in like the shut your face mode. But from that scene, they're talking. It's sunny out, and then they go back into the store, and it's nighttime.
That's true.
See, so that's the point I was making before. But do you think the Chief Woodenhead was a little sad that he didn't get the rest of his war paint finished?
Yeah, I think he definitely was.
Because that was the first thing he did when he came to life.
So Ray and his wife talk for a bit. They go back inside, and this is right where the robbery begins, right?
Yeah, they're greeted by Sam White Moon, the nephew of Ben White Moon.
Yeah,
who's played by Holt McCallany.
And this is a classic character for the ages.
Man, even as I hated this guy so much. That hair, man, just drove me wild. And not in a good way.
What are you kidding?
Yeah, the conceit of this character is that he is heading to Hollywood, where he's going to be a big actor because he's got a luxurious mane of hair.
As soon as they see this hair, they're going to say, Sam, get over here. Get in front of these cameras.
I'm pretty sure, as much as you would love more lush hair, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't want that hair.
It's true. You know, it's funny because it's a very similar hair to the hair that Stacy Keach grows in Body Bags when he is afraid of losing his hair and he takes like a weird supplement. But I would not say that would be my ideal hair.
Would you manage it more into like a bowl cut?
One of the henchmen, what was his name? Fat fuck?
It was Fatso Gribbins.
Fatso Gribbins. Mm-hmm. This was even as a kid, all these characters, you were just like, oh, these are not classic characters at all.
Yeah.
You know,
not at all.
Fatso was played by David Holbrook, who is Hal Holbrook's son. And the whole time I was thinking he should just tell the guy like, yo, I am Hal Holbrook's son. So when we go to Hollywood, we'll know somebody. that guy had the least impressive career out of everybody in that scene. Not the scene, but in the segment. So Hal Holbrook didn't do him any favors. The other guy who they referred to as Rich Guy, what's his deal?
His name's Don Harvey. He was in like things that you probably never saw. I don't know. Look him up. I don't know.
Great content.
What do you want me to say? I didn't look up Don Harvey. So anyways, Sam White Moon. Mm-hmm. He's just an over-the-top villain.
He could not be worse.
Everything he said was just like so hack. But the thing, you know what else I hated about him? The makeup they used for him. Like obviously it was a white guy that they were trying to make look Native American. Mm-hmm. But he kind of looks more like he could be on on Mars in Total Recall.
Yeah, he does.
He has that like makeup like when Arnold goes to like the Martian surface without a suit on. But what do you think of the pairing of these 3 hateable ruffians to the 2 lovable older couple?
I definitely prefer the older couple.
Did you like the part where Fatso Gribbins says to Race Bruce, shove this into his mouth as he gestures to his dick, and then says, heap big? That was a classic
That was
line.
just such a weird. That was just a weird line. I was like, "What is this?"
No, shove this in his mouth. Heat big.
What about the dialogue that Sam Whitemoon has when he's talking about how he's going to become a star?
I just don't think anyone thinks that he's going to be a star.
What are you kidding?
I don't know who's been telling him he's going to be a star.
Well,
that was a weird dimension to give to that character.
I'm going to Hollywood, man. And this hair is going to get me paid and laid.
You should play the clip, but when he's talking about there's going to be 100 million women waiting to get his hair between their legs.
There's 100 million women out there just waiting to run that hair between their legs.
I don't know who's he kidding with that.
What are you kidding?
Did you notice that when George Kennedy was interacting with Sam, he had a fly crawling around on his head? Like different cuts.
I
they
did not
couldn't get that
notice
fly off his head. Poor George Kennedy.
I was shocked to see that George Kennedy only died in 2016.
Yeah, lived a nice life.
And he was a good friend.
You know what scene was pretty comical?
What?
Just the interaction, just the dialogue. When Sam's was like points out that Ray has the Indian, I think it was called Alane, which was like the turquoise and stuff. Mm-hmm. And he's just like, "What's that Alane in your hand?" And like the way that George Kennedy like looks at his hand and realizes he's holding it, but he's just like, "What?" And then he like puts it behind his back like to hide it.
Yeah, that's
but it's
brilliant.
clear that Sam saw it because he pointed it out. Like, wouldn't you just go with the argument like it's nothing? He tried that with his wallet, saying there's no money in the wallet.
Yeah. When so they're robbing the store and they're finding that there's not very much money there. And I have to say that did remind me of something. I wonder if you thought of the same thing.
What's that?
Do you remember a job I worked at a pet store called, and I'm going to edit this.
Yeah. Yes, totally remember that. Tell that story.
I worked at a place called Pizza, and I was a delivery boy, but I also worked the counter and, made pizzas. And you worked at a pizza place. You know the drill. And folded boxes. Like at the Chinese places, they would never let us do anything. But at the pizza places, you were a full employee. And this guy worked at the pet store in the same shopping center on Long Island, and he used to come into the pizza place. And, at that point, I was like 18 or 19, didn't know that many people that were into movies. Internet was in its infancy. So I would talk to this guy about movies, and we really got along. And I remember Shallow Grave, the Danny Boyle movie, which is kind of a random movie. That was like one thing he was really into. And so he was like, "Hey, on your days off from the pizza place, do you want to work in the pet store?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." But the thing was, the pet store was not doing well financially. And he would always talk about how he was going to kill himself. And all the tanks in the store were filled with dead animals. And
they're also very cloudy. I remember that.
Oh my God. The fish tanks were so dirty. And when people would come inside, he would insult them. And then he would be depressed when they would leave for like fucking up a sale. For instance, one time a little kid came in with his mom and was like, "I want to get something for my hamster. I want to get the plastic maze. It's like a tunnel, like a plastic maze." And the guy goes, "I think you mean a habit trail?" That interaction spiraled a bit to where the mother was like, "You're very rude." And she stormed out with her kid. And then he was like, "Why did I do that? Why did I do that?" And like put his head down. And I remember one time, one time he was like, "Oh, so how many hours do you think I've worked? How many hours do you think you've worked since I last paid you?" And I was like, "I don't know, like 25. And he's like, "How much money do you want for that?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And he starts like taking out like $40 out of the register. And I was like, "I guess $40 is okay," which is like $1 or something an hour. And he gave me the $40 and he's like, "Oh, now you have more money than I do."
How much longer did he last in business after you worked for him?
Not very much longer at all. I remember he also used to take stuff off. Like he would just randomly be like, "Time to go shopping," and he would take something off the shelves and use his credit card to buy it. And I was like, "I don't understand. Why are you doing that?" And he's like, "No, just like giving myself a loan." And it took me a long time to realize that, man, that was a bad sign of a business going downhill when you got to do that.
I always pictured him kind of like a John Wayne Gacy type, except that he wasn't like
vibe.
Yeah, except he didn't have it like that. He was a community like presence to him. Like he probably was hated in the community.
And just in case this misanthropic pet store guy is listening and he's hurt by this, I will say that the silver lining of this is that he appeared in many video games where you could create a player and served admirably on NBA 2K and 2K1 team. Mm-hmm. In addition to UFC fighting, he was also a pretty brutal fighter.
Knockout Kings, I believe.
Knockout Kings did a great job in that game. So wherever you are remembered.
I'm guessing he's not alive anymore, but who knows? He's probably hoarding. Actually, he's probably become a hoarder.
I bet he's alive, and I don't think he has enough stuff to hoard.
I don't know. Where are we at with this? I forgot. I already lost track. Oh, did we get to the part where they were killed?
Yeah, it's like they're getting robbed, they get killed, and we know that old Chief Woodenhead's going to come for revenge.
Mm-hmm.
But the scenes where it happens... Sorry, you go.
Well, as the ruffians make their getaway and they are planning on meeting back up to make their way to Hollywood, the chief is scowling as they're driving off. So that's when we know the chief's getting ready to go to war.
And he opens his mouth and
remember how
yells.
He does?
Yeah. That was...
that is...
I've done that howl many times. Whenever I get more than 3 emails a day.
The chief comes to life and, he's out for revenge.
Mm-hmm.
And the first house we see is Fatso's place.
Yeah.
And Cisco Kid, which is an ongoing theme, or one of the ongoing themes in this film, is playing on the TV.
It was one of Mike Gornick's favorite bits of media, and they were able to get it cheaply.
Yes, he did say that. And once again, the set for his apartment was, dressed very appropriately. It seemed very fitting for that kind of character.
It was certainly disgusting, and it made you not like Fatso.
He did not like him. He had the pin up on the wall, the grime everywhere, and he paid for it with a couple arrows through the chest.
Yes, he did.
They went through the killings pretty quickly in this. It was a scene,
yeah,
and then we're done.
It was very simple. It was just 3 scenes where we see a little bit more of Old Chief Woodenhead, but not enough. It's basically just like a condensed slasher movie done in rapid succession.
Yeah. Well, the Chief Woodenhead was played by a mime, I believe, named Dan Kamen.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he didn't really do much, but I guess he knew some of the gestures as he was moving into the apartment. When you actually get a glimpse of him, because most of the time you just don't see him at all. You see his silhouette.
Yeah, they do kind of an elaborate kill with shadows, which was kind of cool. The second time I watched it, I was like, that's kind of cool, I guess.
It's kind of cool, but the blood splattered the wrong way.
Oh, I forgot that you're a criminal pathologist.
And then finally, we're at old Sam White Moon's place, which...
The moment we've been waiting for.
Yeah, that was a set that was completely built, I guess, because they needed to do, the being pulled through the wall shot.
Mm-hmm.
But I did love... One of the best things about this segment was seeing the chief come in.
Yeah.
That low angle, I think it was called a Dutch shot.
Dutch angle, yeah.
Dutch angle. And it's very, comic book-esque. And that was a great shot, that angle.
It was. And he looked creepy and wooden in that shot, although not as tall as I think he should have, but it was cool.
He's 4 foot tall. He's 4 feet tall.
Well...
But, Sam is dismayed that he's come to life. He's like, no, you shouldn't be alive, and shoots him, and then runs off into the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
And then the chief busts through the wall, grabs him by his luscious locks, and pulls him through the wall and scalps him.
You knew that it was like, wait a second. This guy is a Native American chief. He's against this guy who loves his hair. I do believe we're going to see a scalping.
I bet you, if you were an audience member that saw this in theaters, people were going nuts for that.
I bet. They were rioting in the aisles.
What did you think the chief's motive, or Chief Woodenhead's motive was? Was it revenge for his friends being murdered, or for Ray being murdered? Do you think it was more for his people, that he disrespected his people? What do you think it was?
I think it was revenge for the people getting murdered.
Really?
The chief was like, who's going to sing Jimmy Crack Corn to me every morning?
As long as I'm drinking Jimmy's crack corn.
But also the what's it called? The Alane? Yeah, the Alane. Like, that was taken, so that was probably very disrespectful, or considered an insult as people to steal from your own people. I don't know. I mean, I guess all the reasons are good enough. But it's funny that, like, if anything, Sam should have been the only one that was killed. Like, Fatso and Andy were obviously just dicks, but they didn't really do anything.
Well, you lay down with dogs, you get up with fleas.
That's true. Well said. All right. Are you over this fucking segment?
I'm over this fucking segment. I just want to sum it up by saying never liked it, still don't like it. Very, very forgettable. And when you listen to the commentary and read a bit about the film, it seems like the budget was cut at the last few weeks of pre-production, and it seems like they lost a lot of time because of the hurricane. And it seems like Old Chief Woodenhead is probably the one that suffered the most, because I think they lost 6 or 8 days off of the schedule of this. So then the second segment, we have another animated interstitial, which no one cares about.
Okay, so the Raft. Loved it.
Yeah, the Raft is cool. The Raft is by far the best segment in this film, and it makes the film worth watching.
Did Stephen King actually write this story too, or what do you know how far Stephen King's involvement goes?
Yeah, this is a story I'm almost positive from Skeleton Crew, and I know the script was written by Romero, but I think that Stephen King definitely gave his thoughts on it. Although it seems like Stephen King and Romero were both too busy during the making of this film to really participate.
And it shows. It really does.
It really does. But the Raft is a pretty good segment. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Okay. The main guy for this is the character Randy, played by Daniel Beer. And he was... I didn't recognize him. I didn't know he went on to do anything else, but apparently he's been working steadily. He was, I guess one of his more notable roles was in Point Break.
Oh, I don't remember him.
Yeah. And then we have Jeremy Greene, who played Laverne. She didn't have any roles after that, really. I think she just done like 2 things. But Michael Gornick described her as beautiful. If you remember that. Then we have Paul Statterfield, who played Deke.
Yeah.
And his claim to fame, do you remember the very short-lived 1994 drama Hotel Malibu?
No, I do not.
And it starred up-and-coming Jennifer Lopez, but it did have a great intro. And if you could play that intro, it was like a steel drum thing. And then lastly, the only other character is Paige Hanna, who is Rachel. And her notable role was she was the tour guide in Gremlins 2, if you remember her.
Wait, so she's the one who dies first?
Yeah, she's the first one to die. She didn't have many lines in this, I don't believe.
Yeah. No, I don't remember her as a tour guide, but that's a good, interesting fact.
Yeah. So the Raft starts off, it's described as an adventure that's gone awry. And I'll give them credit, they did a pretty good job of establishing the characters very quickly, and that first scene of them in, what kind of car would you say that is? Some hot rod.
Shit, sorry.
Definitely a sports car.
My toys just fell off the desk.
This guy's a collector.
Yellow.
Yeah, it's yellow car. Who knows
I want to
what
say
type it
Camaro,
is.
but I will be corrected in 2 seconds.
No, because I'm not putting in this conversation about what type of car it is in anyway.
All right, so they're in this sports car
Yeah.
that Deke is driving, and they establish the characters very quickly, and you know exactly what type of character Deke is.
Yeah, he's kind
And
of like
he's like the jockey, like pothead. Randy is the nerd, and it's set up very quickly because he knows about this place because on a geology expedition. And you know, the one girl's the party girl, and then Rachel's the shy type. But the thing is, and I don't know if you picked this up, but did you get what their relationship was to each other? Like, it seemed like they had no business hanging out together.
Yeah, I couldn't really figure out what the relationship between Rachel and what was the nerdy guy? Randy, because at one point she mentions a trip they took a few years
4 years
earlier.
early. But like, she was so quiet in the car, and like, she either knew something seemed off, or she just wasn't into that scene. Like
She's established
wasn't
weirdly in the car because you think she's going to be like the final girl or like the hero of the story because she's like refusing the weed. She's like looking out thoughtfully. We think, oh, this is the character who has the most substance. But then she kind of vanishes.
But do you think they like each other? Like, I feel like we're supposed to believe that Deke and Randy are friends because they call each other Poncho and Cisco, which is another reference to Cisco Kid.
Oh, I did not notice that.
But other than that, like, it's like having nicknames for each other, but like, there's no other reason that you would believe that they would be friends.
It's true. And it's a bit vague what their motivations for going out to this raft are in the first place. Was it a dare? Well, you know, it's clearly very cold out.
I think the raft, because it's supposed to be not quite Halloween yet, but late September, maybe early October.
Yeah. I think they say it's a few days till Halloween.
So I think it's probably like a thing that's legendary around their college. That's like, oh, did you do the raft? Like,
okay.
And it's bragging rights kind of thing. But maybe that's how they got paired up. Like, Randy knew about the exact location, and Deke was like, let's do it. We got to do it. Take me out there.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like if it was a college thing, they probably would already know that this monster was eating people. Because it seemed pretty determined. I think the idea is no one has swam there in a while.
But I feel like, knowing me, you know, I would just tell people that I did go out to the raft during the fall season.
That's
and
true.
say I did it without actually doing it. Yeah, so they pull up and they get out of the car, and Deke immediately strips down to his Hulk Hogan underwear, and he's very muscular, so he's that guy.
Yeah.
And he's got the weed, and he like tucks it into his in a plastic bag, and tucks it into his like waistband so he could bring it out to the raft.
Oh, I didn't see the plastic bag. I was like, how is that weed dry?
Yeah, he put it in a plastic bag. But the funny thing, just to get off track for a second, is when he gets onto the raft, it's missing. But then in the next scene, when you see him again, it's tied up in his waistband again. So continuity issue there. But so they're all stripping down, which was a poor decision because it's already cold. And they have to swim in. I don't know what the temperature was supposed to be.
That water's 45 degrees, 50 tops. Your heart could stop.
Actuality, when they shot it, was 50-degree water.
That's pretty cold. You could, when they go in the water, you can see the suffering on their faces. It's pretty awkward to watch almost.
Yeah, Randy's balls turned to ice cubes, as he pointed out.
The girls look at each other like in horror and like kind of disbelief, like look to someone off camera as like they're like, "What is this?"
But they're kind of dare each other, like, "You're going to do this," and they both wind up going in. Although Rachel made the best choice by wearing, I guess, the most clothing, even though she's the first one killed.
Yeah.
But I did like one of my favorite shots was when they're all in the water, and it's that low angle shot again. And you see like Deke's the furthest out, and then Randy, and then Rachel and Laverne. Do you remember that shot? It's cool looking.
No.
Man, you're watching it on what? Fast forward. So they get to the raft, and as they get to the raft, Randy notices this blob eating up a duck.
I wondered how they shot that. I was like, Did they just abuse that duck or what? How did they get that?
I assumed that there was probably somebody in like scuba gear holding its feet and then like moving it so it would flap its wings a little bit to get.
Yeah, that sounds credible.
But I always felt bad for the duck. Like, what did the duck do to deserve that?
Yeah, the duck had no idea it was in a film.
And Randy notices that this blob is starting to make its way towards the raft, and he's panicking now and telling the girls to hurry their ass up and get on the raft.
Laverne, swim faster!
And of course, Rachel built some tension. Can't get her bearings. Can't grip the ladder. It keeps falling in.
That was almost awkward. Kind of the fakeness of her falling as she keeps trying to get up.
It almost looked like Randy was like face palming her back into the lake.
But I thought the suspense with Laverne, like getting on the raft at the very last second before the blob, which I believe they mostly use scuba divers and sometimes a remote control device to get moving. Laverne just barely gets out of the water in time, and it was really suspensefully done and well edited.
Yeah. What did you think of the blob? At times it looked like just like somebody took a lawn bag, put it in the water, and threw some crud on it.
Yeah.
It definitely wasn't effective. A menacing monster. What?
No, but
I thought it was effective.
Yeah, it looks different, and sometimes it looks too shitty. It's just like that's just like a garbage bag. But I don't know. When I just rewatched it, I thought it was effective.
Yeah, I mean, when it's like bubbling up through like the slits in the raft, it looks cool. Or obviously, once it attacks the people, that's probably when it looks the best.
Yeah, those are cool effects.
But they definitely, played around with different textures and didn't, settle on one of them through the filming.
Oh, yeah.
So they just kept going forward with it.
There's different looks for the blob throughout.
Definitely.
I think because they also did some insert shots of the blob after they wrapped production on this segment, and those look totally different. So
they all make it onto the raft, and Deke immediately starts smoking pot. Oh no, Rachel, right? Starts just teasing the blob or staring at it.
Rachel kind of gets hypnotized by the blob as if it were a sexy Anne Rice vampire and not just like a garbagey oil slick.
And she gets, pulled into the lake, which was a cool looking effect.
That effect was accomplished by reverse photography, and it was pretty cool. Go on.
You could tell it was reverse photography based on her weird, like, jerking mannerisms.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's still cool looking.
Yeah, it was cool. And
she gets, pulled into the lake. And she pops out of the water to tell them it hurts. It hurts! But then she fades into the abyss very peacefully.
When she comes out of the water... When she comes out of the water and she's covered in that goo and screaming, that reminds me of swimming in the canals by us.
It's probably even worse now.
Actually, I wanted to go on a digression, if that's okay.
Go for it.
I was thinking about this segment, and I was thinking if I calculated it, I've probably spent like 3 months of my life on a raft just like that. I've had a lot of experiences. Yeah, in Maine. I've had a lot of experiences on rafts. Did you ever come across anything like the Blob? I never came across anything like the Blob, but I do have a notable experience to tell you about.
Is this? I don't think I've ever heard this because you never told me about your raft experiences.
I was. This must have been like 1994. I was 16 years old, and my older brother and this other kid that came to Maine were going to town to try to pick up some girls. So I went with them. And it used to be a thing that you would just like kind of walk around this town and you would get accosted by locals. And sometimes it would go romantically and sometimes it would be scary. And we went to town, we walked around, we couldn't find any girls. I was like, oh, life is over. From here on out, it's just depression. And we got back to the lake and it was a really foggy night. Mm-hmm. And we got out of the car and we heard these voices across the lake, like girls' voices. And we're like, wait a second, we hear girls. We got to go across the lake. So this is a lake that's completely surrounded by forest. It's totally foggy. And we get in the canoe and like slowly paddle over towards these laughing voices in the fog. We get to the public beach is where it was coming from. and we don't see anybody. And we pull up our canoes, and then we hear, it was so terrifying, we heard girls coming through the woods, and we're like, oh, what are we going to do? And like they come and see us and like totally scream. And we're like, oh, sorry. We heard voices. We pulled up in our canoe. And then we ended up talking to them for a bit, and they were cool. And everyone starts swimming. And somehow it evolves into skinny dipping.
How old were you for this?
16.
Oh, that's a good age.
But everyone was skinny dipping except for me, because I was too shy to go skinny dipping. And I was like, no, I like this. I like my bathing suit. Like I tried to make up some excuse, just sounded like nonsense. And they were closer to my age than my brother and this kid Keith's age. So their attention was kind of focused on me, but I was like looking horrible because I wouldn't go skinny dipping. And they were like, come on, just get naked. And they were naked. And I was like, no, maybe in a bit. And when, we hung out for a while, and then I was like, I guess I got to go back to my cottage. And the cute girl was like, oh, I'll walk you back. And so we walked back through the woods. And then I like wanted to like hold her hand or something, but I didn't have the guts. And I get back to the cottage. And then when my brother and our friend arrived, they were like, oh, that girl was like, why didn't he kiss me? And I just hated my cowardice, because that would have been like my first like real kiss, And for the whole year after we saw those girls, I was just like, man, I wish I didn't fuck that up. I wish I had done the right things. I have all these regrets. Anyway, the next year I'm 17 years old, and there was a power failure one afternoon. So I just went walking on this dirt road, and then I just see the girl coming the other way. And I was like, hey, and she's like, aren't you Ed? And I was like, yeah. And we made plans to hang out later. So that night, me and the friend and her and another friend of hers, we all go to a different lake. And I'm like, this time I'm skinny dipping. I'm doing it. I'm not going to, I was afraid. I didn't want to get changed in front of everyone else, but I was totally committed to getting naked. So I kind of go off to the side, get naked, and then enter the beach and like swim over to where everyone else is swimming out. And then everyone arrives at a raft, much like this one. And they all get on the raft, and I realize that everyone's wearing bathing suits. And it was just the strangest choice of me to assume that they'd be skinny dipping again, because they had once a year ago. And everyone's like, Ed, get on the raft. And I'm just like swimming. I'm just like, no, it's cool here. And they're like, oh, come on, we're all on the raft. I was like, no, it's fine. So the cute girl and my friend got out. They're like, oh, let's get out for a while. They get out. And then I'm like trying to swim to shore. And her friend, who is not attractive, is just following me in the water. And I'm getting to be in like 2 feet of water, but I have like my whole body underwater. And she's just like looking at me, blowing bubbles, like. And I was like, I'm going to get out any second now. And she's just like, me too. And finally she looked away, and I ran over to where my clothes were and put, my clothes on. And no one ever knew that I was skinny dipping.
Until now.
Okay, so let's getting back to the.
All right, so Rachel is gone, and at first Deke and Randy are freaking out, but like Laverne seemed like oblivious.
Did she fall in?
Did you notice that? Like she's just
she was intentionally oblivious at first, because like she kind of laughed and she was like, "Did she fall in?"
Yeah, but how do you not hear the person screaming saying it hurts?
Well, that's just when you
that's
have
just life.
That skunk weed from 1987 and one hit of a joint.
Yeah. So the next thing, does anything else happen until Deke gets killed, or is it?
No, basically, it's cool because they're in the situation, and they're like, I think the best anthology segments kind of just set up a cool situation that we can relate to, and they just proceed from there.
Yeah, I mean, this segment's very effective. That in less than like 30 seconds, we know who the characters are, and then in the next like 2 minutes, we're like at the raft, and we know pretty much what's happening in this story.
Yeah, it gets into it very quickly.
Yeah.
The one thing that disappointed me, I thought it would be cool. I can't remember if it's Zeke or Laverne who has a necklace on, but I was like, oh, one of my instincts would have been to throw that necklace in the water and see if you could have like distracted the monster, you know?
That's a good idea. I would have thrown one of the people into the water and then made my break for it.
Yeah, that's another option.
I think Deke, his name's Deke, not Zeke, but Deke, I think he was going to make a break for it at one point, and they like stopped him. They should have let him. Like he had a good opportunity.
Yeah, that was the best time for his his escape. In many ways, this is kind of a short about competitive swimming.
You know, like as I mentioned before, that I was afraid of the blob as a kid, or just the possibility of something like, engulfing me in unknown waters. But part of me always wanted to be in a scenario where I could try to swim against the blob. I just kind of needed to know if I could make it.
Yeah.
But where it would have been safe, like maybe like another person. Like I needed some, some math here, some algorithms to know how fast that blob was swimming at, and see if I could outswim it. Did you ever do any pool games like that? Crazy pool games?
Of course.
What was the greatest pool game?
The greatest pool game.
If you say Marco Polo, we're done.
No, it would definitely
Although
be
we've been
like
submerged.
Some kind of pool volleyball. But a lake game, I was always very into King of the Dock, King of the Raft, like the raft that they're on in this. And I was quite a good duck fighter in my day.
I'm surprised that is a great game as a kid. I'm surprised people didn't get more hurt playing that kind of thing.
Yeah, it was like so many narrowly avoided like head hits on the raft, but they basically never happen.
Yeah. Plus you're getting thrown, like people are getting dragged off. Like,
yeah.
But one last, I'm sure people will be interested with this, with Marco Polo, that friend that, I don't know if he was really a friend. I think we both hated him. But he was an expert Marco Polo player, if there's such a thing.
Really? He was like a bat.
And he had a tactic in Marco Polo, which I don't think was a legal move. I mean, everybody knows the rules of Marco Polo, the do's and don'ts. And I mean, he kind of lived by his own game.
Wait. I have to clarify. It's this move he would do wasn't Marco Polo specific. He was kind of famous for trying to drown other kids while yelling submergence. Like everyone knew this kid is the kid who would try to drown you in a pool. It was kind of like his fetish.
Yes, and he was also a lot bigger for his age. He probably outweighed everybody by like 50 pounds.
Yeah, he grew. He was bigger, quicker than anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, he hit puberty before the rest of everybody.
When this kid started drowning you, you really felt real human terror.
Yeah, I mean that's a very rational fear, but like when he would grab you by the head and push you underwater, like it was up to him to let you go. So you could be there for 3 seconds or you could be there for like 30 seconds. And it was just sheer panic the whole time.
Yeah, I'm surprised that like there was never a tragedy.
So you'd be playing Marco Polo, and you'd be and you'd be, saying Marco. And all of a sudden you just hear submergence, and it was like, holy shit, what's about to, and you were underwater at that point.
Oh God. When you encountered this kid in a pool, it was like coming across like a Zelda enemy that you can't beat. You're just like, oh fuck, I didn't cook any meals. I don't have a good weapon. This guy's about to drown me.
And the thing was that even when my move when he was was just not say a word and hide behind the ladder or like get out of the pool and just hope he didn't like say fish out of the water. Because when he grabbed you, he pulled you underwater. Everything was about being pulled underwater.
It was really. I would have been surprised if I felt like as I was drowning, I just felt his like hard dick on me.
It was very erotic to him.
It really was.
To this day, maybe he's like, I think he moved to Florida. Maybe that's like there's a series of unsolved crimes.
He kind of vanished. He's kind of like one of those people who you don't really hear about in their adult life anymore. They kind of just vanished. Mm-hmm. I think he might be the Blob.
It's a possibility.
This reminds me of just one last tangent. I don't know if I've ever told you that I was the spider on the natural playground at Seaford Harbor School in the 80s.
Ooh, that was a scary game as well.
Yeah, I remember even how it happened, being in like first grade, and this kid being like, "It's a spider," and we were trying to get him to like attack us from underneath the spider web, and he was just like, "I'm not the spider," and like walked off, and I was like, "If this kid's not gonna be the spider, I'll be the spider." And then for many recesses after, that was all I did. I went straight to the web and just grabbed at kids above me.
Can you explain to everybody what the spider web is on a playground? Because the natural playground is probably like a relic of the past.
It was just like a net made out of chains.
A very dangerous toy for kids because you would definitely get snagged in some of those links.
It was a net made of chains that hung up above a pit of gravel.
The 80s, where it was a terrific time.
Yeah, and that was like the advanced playground. Like that was like, when they brought that in,
art.
they had like the slideshow to show us. They were like, "This is what we did."
It was state of the art. Like, yeah, that was teased for like a year. Like we couldn't wait for that thing to be built. So as the spider, did like other people like know you were the spider and were excited for like the lunch break?
Well, in years later, no, I basically just ruled a solitary kingdom.
I'm just thinking of you by yourself, like touching yourself in the web while everybody else was doing other things. Who were some of your victims? I mean, you don't have to say their names, but like, what kind of people were they? What kind of people were playing along?
Oh, I only preyed upon the weak, of course. If any like a cool kid would go in there, I would just like sit on my hands and be like, "Don't look at me."
What did you do with your victims?
The spider only preyed upon lesser life forms.
What did you do to your victims?
The forgotten kids, the troubled kids. Years later, people would be like, "Weren't you the spider, bro?" And then only then did I kind of remember sitting underneath that net, waiting. Come to me.
Okay, so the next thing is Deke gets attacked through the slits in the raft, and they grab hold of his foot.
Every time I see it, it's disappointing because I'm always like, I wanted to see if Deke could outrun him.
Yeah, but instead Deke suffers a severe foot cramp.
Yeah,
but actually the effect was like the way it was tearing apart like the muscle in his leg, in his calf, and like the tendon. That was pretty well done, Ed French.
Well, it's hard to say because I think he left during this segment, but it did look like Ed French work. So.
Well, he did do the ending effect, the big one, the big payoff effect.
I don't know that he did that.
Yeah,
I thought they mentioned credit. I thought they said it was like the mechanical guy. Anyway. Well,
in the Daniel Beer interview, he gives credit to Ed French.
Okay, that's good. Daniel Beer can live then. The spider will let him fly off.
So Deke gets sucked into a hole in the raft and is killed that way. And Randy does try to help him. He grabs his arm, kind of like in Cliffhanger, the way Sylvester Stallone's holding on to the girl before he lets her go and kills her. But Randy didn't really give his all. He knew Deke was done for.
Yeah,
let him slip right through his fingers very quickly.
Yeah.
And then we approach one of the weirder scenes.
I know. This is the infamous scene.
The weird, and I'm going to put in quotes, sex scene. Which,
well, I wouldn't say that.
Well, that's how they phrase it. But I was shocked to hear that it was deliberate. And the way, what's it called, Daniel Beer talked about it, he kind of seemed very remorseful about it. But he did mention it.
So just to be clear, this is the scene where Laverne is asleep and Randy kind of starts sexually assaulting her, basically. He's like feeling her up. He starts like kissing her stomach, which is a weird move.
Yeah, he lifts her shirt up and like, yeah. But here's the thing. I don't know if that was said in the commentary, but it was deliberate in the sense that horror films during the late 80s and 90s didn't really do well.
Mm-hmm.
And one of like the mandates of a horror film was that they needed a sex scene. And this was what they came up with. And part of that was because we didn't want Randy as a hero. We wanted him as a villain.
Yeah.
So when he was killed at the end, it wasn't like we were going to feel bad for him. It's kind of like a revenge thing that he got what he deserved.
Yeah.
And he was supposed to be deliberately creepy, which he was.
Yeah.
And we did certainly root against them.
Yeah, that's true. I was thinking about that because I was like, it would have been so easy for them to have had this scene be consensual where, you know, she's like, I can't believe this is happening. And he's like, let's just hold each other. And then, you know, they start kissing. But yeah, I did think, I guess it's to make it his imminent death something that we cheer for.
Mm-hmm. So in that scene, after he's, you know, groping her, her face is, you know, flat on the raft, and she's kind of making sounds, and then it turns to more of that she's in pain or agony, and we see that the blob has attached itself to her face, and Randy just completely backs off. I don't even think he tried to help her.
The timing of this was weird too, because it was like, well, that's not important. Anyway, what were you saying?
So after Laverne is dragged into the water, and she emerges out of the water, but this time she's completely like dissolved. Like her face is just a skull now, which is cool looking.
That's like what I thought piranhas did to everybody. You know, like when you're a kid and you're like obsessed with piranhas, you're like, oh, don't ever go swimming in the Amazon.
So Randy after Laverne is murdered immediately makes his break for it and jumps into the lake and starts swimming towards shore. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you knew, I think it was mentioned in the commentary, but what's his name? What was the director's friggin' name? I keep forgetting. Mike Gornick. Didn't really, just kind of like glossed over it, but Daniel got hypothermia. Daniel got hypothermia swimming back to shore. And in his interview, he made a big deal about it.
Really? What did he say?
Like it really affected the production. Like they had to shut down production for a few days.
Yeah, I remember that.
And like he really like was saying how like Michael Gornick was so great in that and was with him and like stuck beside him. And it seemed like Michael Gornick just barely remembered it. He was saying like after that he could only do like 2 to 3 like takes at a time, and he constantly had like a paramedic on set with him, like keeping check on him to make sure that he was okay. But he did say that to this day he still has issues with his body temperature because of that. He's permanently affected. So he really did give a lot for this scene or for his craft.
Wow.
And
I'll have to remember that. More. I'll have to remember that weakness of his if he ever enters the spider's domain.
Splash him with some ice cold water. Give him the ice bucket challenge.
Hello. Some people don't like the ending of the wave coming because they say it violates the rules that we've established with the monster in the first place. But you know what? I like it.
How does it violate the rules?
Because why didn't the blob just do the wave onto the raft when it couldn't reach them before?
Well, he was antagonizing the blob when he made it to shore. He beat him. I beat you.
I beat you!
But they explained it. I don't know how it was explained in the commentary about that last scene. Mm-hmm. But basically, Ed French built like a bunch of like cantilevers that acted like if you pulled it down, it pulled up like a curtain or like a guillotine almost where it came down. Seemed like a pretty like ingenious contraption.
It's a very cool effect.
Mm-hmm. It looks a little dated, but it's still cool.
Yeah.
The fact that it's not CGI or any of that garbage to me.
I would say the thing about it is just that as it fades out, you can kind of see it like not really enveloping the guy, but that's a small criticism. Ed French is the best.
It also lets out a belch, which was ridiculous. Did you since Randy's portrayed as the geek in this segment, did you find yourself relating to him in any ways?
Nah, he seems still kind of like a jock.
He did seem like a jock.
He was just like skinnier than Deke.
When I just want to say, like when the weird thing about the blob, when Laverne like rolls onto her back after, being attacked by the blob, the texture of it looked like molasses. The way she was moving around on her face. Mm-hmm. What did you think of the blob as far as what did you envision it to be if you were, in its clutches?
The blob is the stuff that has been abandoned at this secret location. And some time has gone by. It hasn't been able to be eaten by people, infect people, and that's what it looks like.
It was moving.
All right. Anything else about this segment?
The last thing I want to say was I did like the last shot. It was once again very EC comic-esque, where They're looking at the beach, and you see the sign.
Yeah.
It says no swimming. Thought that was cool.
Yeah.
And, of course, you get the creep coming in, and he says,
Well, swimmers, that was, slick,
His lines were really bad there. And it was like, when they showed the comic book panel that was like, hey, that was slick, I was just like, I can't believe they even put that bad line into that comic book form.
Yeah, I mean, all his puns were pretty horrendous.
Yeah.
And finally, we get to our last segment, the Hitchhiker.
And this is another segment I've always felt the same about, and I feel like everyone feels the same about as well.
Well, I feel like it just goes on way too long.
It does go on way too long, but I think the general consensus is this one is okay.
Yeah, I don't love the character, and I know you're not supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
But I also didn't really care about the Hitchhiker either. But the Hitchhiker, we'll just say, he's played by Tom Wright, who's been in a million things. He's not only an actor, he did all his own stunts.
Yeah, I was going to say, is he mostly a stuntman?
Yeah, I think, but people would recognize him. I'm sure there's a huge Seinfeld audience. He was Mr. Morgan that worked at Yankee Stadium with George.
Oh, okay. I remember that.
He would stand out. Yeah, he would stand out as that. He was on China Beach, which was a show I loved. And then also the female lead is Lois Chiles, who was, I guess, most famous for her role as a Bond girl in Moonraker.
Oh, did not know that.
Do you know what her name was in Moonraker? Do you remember?
No.
Holly Goodhead. You know how they had those names for the Bond girls?
Yeah.
One of the most overt ones, I guess. How did you feel about Lois Chiles in this role?
Well, it's definitely a strange part because she's introduced having just had sex with a guy that she's paying to have sex with her. Although it was kind of weird because at first I thought maybe he was just kind of like a boy toy that she took care of, but then I was like, or maybe he's a professional sex worker. But then she's driving home and she's desperate to get home in time because she thinks her husband will find out that she's been unfaithful and will fuck with her in her inevitable divorce proceedings.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything else you want to say about the introduction?
No, there's not much to say at all. You keep going.
There really isn't. There's really not much to say about the Hitchhiker. It's pretty self-evident of what you're going to get with that title.
Yeah,
but
she hits a hitchhiker.
Yeah.
And then
she's under duress because she wants to get home.
Yeah.
And to not blow her cover with her husband, and she's not paying attention. What was she doing where she swerved off the road?
I don't know, but it was a very prolonged swerve. She's swerving this way, she's swerving that way.
And she winds up hitting this hitchhiker that she kills. Mm-hmm. And she does not do the honorable thing, and she just leaves him there for dead.
Yeah, it's a hit and run. You should never
It's
do
a hit
that.
and run. And we do get when do we get the cameo by Stephen King himself as the truck driver?
Shortly after, we see some people who are arriving upon this dead body, kind of a quick microcosm of society, including Stephen King as a truck driver who says, looks like a black guy.
Looks like a black guy.
Because Stephen King, we know, always likes to have a weird racial element in all of his work. So she hits the hitchhiker, keeps going on, and then she just keeps encountering this guy. And I guess what could have made this segment really fun, but doesn't totally work, is that she's a tough lady. And she's really like, when she's dealing with this guy, she's not just afraid, she's like trying to pulverize him. So at one point she gets him like up against a tree, keeps ramming him. At another point, she's like driving through a forest road, which is a very crazy choice on her. I was like, how does she think that's going to work out? Driving through the forest in like a Buick LeSabre from 1985. But yeah, so it's basically her versus this hitchhiker in kind of like a, road battle, like something, you'd see in the guy's hanging on the car, kind of like Death Proof. And it's kind of like vehicular mayhem, like a Mad Max movie, but not nearly as good.
Yeah, I mean, the whole time the hitchhiker is becoming more and more mutilated.
Yeah. So it's kind of like if Griffin Dunn's character from American Werewolf in London were attacking Mad Max for a set piece.
I like that. Now, this reminds me of that Twilight Zone episode. Do you know which episode I'm talking about?
Oh, is it the Hitchhiker one where the woman keeps seeing the same hitchhiker?
Yeah.
Which kind of has a Carnival of Souls twist, I think, right?
Yes.
She's always dead. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Definitely has that feel to it.
But kind of the more action-y kinetic version.
Mm-hmm. Yes. As Tom Wright said in his interview, he said this was particularly difficult to shoot because all the filming was done at night, and it was pretty much 8 degrees to 12 degrees every night, windy and cold. Yeah. So he said by this time, because the whole crew was completely exhausted, they already filmed the other segments prior to this, so this was the last segment filmed, and I mean there was no stunt double, so he had to do all his own stunts. So he said it was not an easy shoot for him. And if you remember the scene, he said the most dangerous scene for him was when he was like stuck in like the radiator grill of the car, and they're like she drives down the hill into like a gravel area or rocky. It's like rocky, and he did that all himself. And he said that took some engineering to rig that car that way, so he did not get injured.
Wow!
And it took a very long time to shoot that scene.
Wow!
And we could attribute those special effects to a very young and promising Greg Nicotero and Howard Berger.
Yeah, the effects on him are pretty effective, you know?
Yeah.
Even at the very end when he's maximum fucked up, like, it's kind of fun how crazy he looks.
Yeah, he's completely, like, his face is completely mangled. Although it definitely looked a little fake the way that tongue was moving. It looked very, robotic, but...
And they kind of stay on the tongue licking her for kind of like longer than you're like, okay, next shot now.
Yeah, I mean, as a kid, the Hitchhiker one didn't really affect me.
Yeah, the Hitchhiker one, which has the most forced catchphrase this side of...
It's not cranberry sauce.
That was the only memorable thing. And I remember just as kids... always thinking this one was an afterthought.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for the ride.
The last thing I'd say that I have, another thing Tom Wright said that aside from the difficult shooting, off screen they had a lot of fun in the Holiday Inn in Bangor, Maine. I don't know if you're familiar with that Holiday Inn. He didn't go into many details, but he said we could use our imagination. So it's not too late where we could book a trip and go up to that Holiday Inn. It's still there, and bring our blacklight with us and just check the hotel room and see what we find.
Wow. I bet if we watched Creepshow 2 there and like told the manager where it's like, you don't know the Creepshow 2? Like, I wonder if we get like really get them to like put up a photo of Creepshow 2.
Give us the Tom Wright suite, as they call it. So any other thoughts on The Hitchhiker?
I guess I would just say, lady, thanks for the ride. I would say that this segment is more relevant than ever in our controversial car sharing world.
So the thing I'm most anxious for is, what's the theme of this film?
This movie is a horror film about losing your hair. Something that we can both relate to. How about this? The creep, the creep who is giving out CREEPSHOW, coincidence? His name's Creep. Giving out the creep shows, he's bald. And Sam Whitemoon, he gets scalped. Laverne, in the segment The Raft, her hair is what does her in.
Yeah.
Then, in The Hitchhiker, at one point, the guy grabs her by her hair. Although he grabbed her by her shoulder so many times, I was like, please just grab her hair so this theory works. But then he does, and, so that's why this is about baldness.
And what about young Billy in the animated?
Billy begins with a B, But,
well,
I don't know. Maybe that's just the way we see the world. Me and my co-host Rusty are just a couple of bonks looking for their revenge.
Wow, I can't believe I'm being lumped into this now.
Hey, look in the mirror, buddy.
Oh my god, you haven't seen me in a while. My hair's holding strong. Do you want to mention the final animated sequence, or you don't give a
Yes.
shit?
Well, I don't really give a shit. The animated sequence where the bullies get their comeuppance, they're eaten by the Venus flytraps just in the most boring way, you know?
Well, the Venus flytraps are like monstrous sized.
Yeah.
They're human Venus flytraps.
At one point, the bully, who looked kind of reminded me of like a Mike style bully.
Edit that out.
Yeah, he was holding open the guy's jaws, so it took like a few extra beats to eat him, and I was just like, please just eat him and end the film.
Let's see those credits. And that was Creepshow too.
No, wait. No, I want to say
Okay.
one more thing.
Go for
I
it.
thought it was really weird when it goes back into live action and we see the creep, played by Tom Savini, giving out creep shows. And then he looks at us, he sees us, and he's like, And it looks like he's got special plans for us, the viewer. But instead, he just throws a creep show our direction, which becomes a cartoon for a second. And then the car pulls away down a road that, I'm not sure, it looked like it was in like Pennsylvania, but I guess it must have been in Maine in the winter. And you just see him throwing creep shows out of this open door. But you could just tell it was so futile. Like, you're like, no one's going to read those. They're going to blow away. There's no one around. Like, why is this guy doing that?
All right, so it's that time of the episode.
It's that time that all the Archers of Horror fans love, when we reveal what is going to be the movie for the next episode.
I'm excited for this one. I'm excited. Episode 7.
Now, your pick last week was Creepshow 2.
Yes.
My pick this week is a film I have never seen. This was I wanted to see this movie when it came out in the theater, but my father saw it in the theater first, and he said, Edward, it's bad. It's a bad film. And I've never seen it since. I am very curious. The director recently passed away. This was one of the movies in his deal with Canon that got him to a much higher budget level, but also happened right around the time that Canon was starting their collapse. Do you know the film I'm talking about? I used to like to imagine that it was an adaptation of an NES game, but it is not.
Oh. Do you want me to guess, or you want to say what it is?
I want you to guess.
The NES was a pretty good giveaway, and I believe the director you're talking about is Tobe Hooper.
That is correct.
I feel like you're talking about Life Force.
Yep, we are finally going to watch. Well, I know you've seen it, but I'm finally going to watch Life Force, which I've already got, the Blu-ray from Arrow. Very
Nice.
cool cover art.
Great cover art. I love it. I have seen it. I have seen it somewhat recently. I could see why your dad didn't want you to see it. There is a lot of full frontal nudity for like the first 2 acts.
Nice.
Yeah. So, and I'm sure if you saw it as a kid, you would have loved the actress that played the alien.
Really?
Yeah, she was very attractive back in the day.
I know it was originally called Space Vampires, and a lot of people lament that would have been a better title than Life Force.
Really? I can see that. But, yeah, I'm not going to say too much about it since you've never seen it.
Cool. Now, we haven't had any guests on this show, but we have a guest here today.
Yes.
It's the president, Barack Obama.
What? How come? Wait, if we have the President Barack Obama here today, why did it take so long for him to get on air when we're done talking about the film?
Listen, if we can go back to the Raft, I'd want to know about Randy. Why is he so good at swimming? Michelle, she tries to get me to swim, but eat healthy. Love Michelle. Michelle's
I like
laughing.
the pauses. Very authentic pauses. Well, I'm very
Sometimes
honored.
You need a cheeseburger. Rusty, what's going to be your pick for the episode after Life Force?
Oh, are we doing a double giveaway?
Sure. Do you already know what you're going to pick?
I do. It's a film I've never seen before and heard some terrible things about it.
I like what I'm hearing.
Wait, should I really give it away? Are people demanding that we give a sneak preview of the next couple episodes?
I think since I didn't get a chance to discuss The Raft, it would be nice for you to tell me what your pick is for the following week.
All right. I'm going to do it because people might want to purchase this film before listening or check it out. I guess I don't even know if this film is available on Amazon or anything.
Sometimes people tease me about my big ears, and I have to say that, Rusty, I'm all ears. Let's hear this pick.
All right, we're going to be checking out the 1990 film Frankenhooker.
I've got to go.